Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy, and this is your home for everything Alberta independence, broadcasting live 6 days a week. That's Monday through Saturday at 5 p.m. or usually 5 p.m.
Yes, but before we start, thank you so much for joining us today. I do know it's sunny over there, so hopefully you got to have a really nice day. It's raining and thundering down here, but if you haven't done so yet, please do subscribe. It really does help us out. Also, we try to read all or most of your comments live after each segment. However, we do pause the whole show for super chats, and those really help us out as well. And we have memberships.
Yeah, the inflation numbers came out in Canada today. They did not look good for Carney. A lot of other statistics are surfacing. Everything's headed in the wrong direction for Canada. And I would say exactly the opposite for the United States. I was looking at their economic numbers today, and they're looking pretty good, especially leading up to the midterms here.
So we shouldn't be really surprised when more and more younger Canadians say that they want to move to the US if they had the opportunity to, and yet for some reason we're not capitalizing on that and telling them all to move to Alberta and to vote for independence.
Well, I don't know if we can tell them to move to Alberta right now because this is only a non-binding referendum. It would have been much easier if it was a binding referendum. I know I was using that line of attack. When I thought we were going to get a binding referendum, I was calling on all national conservatives to move to Alberta. This lengthening out of the process is ultimately hurting the vote a little bit.
But we'll talk more about that in a bit. First of all, Sean, thank you so much. That's 5 p.m. Mexico City time, but funnily enough, right now it is also Alberta time, or Mountain time. So I guess for now we can say 5 p.m. for most people that watch us in Alberta. I know it's different in every single other place. Sean says they want to move, but what about the exit tax? And that's the thing, like if they don't hurry up and do it now or soon, and many of them don't even know that they might be confronted with all these shenanigans that the federal government continues to impose upon people that want to leave and escape.
Well, we were kind of talking about young people there, so I don't think there will be any kind of exit tax on young people because they have nothing. I mean, I left Canada. There was no exit tax for me yet. It's older people that are retired and boomers and boomer ages that actually own houses. They're throwing taxes on assets if you want to leave. Young people typically don't have assets. They're just starting out. And that's really when you want to get them to invest into your country for the next 20 years. I mean, Alberta, once it gets its independence, I think is going to appeal to conservatives across the nation who are going to want to move to Alberta.
And also, Sean, thank you so much for being a member for a month now, but I know you've been following us for a lot longer and you're from the States, so thank you so much for being here. But should we start? Is it breaking news or no?
Yeah, let's go into some breaking news. And I think I put Poilievre in there because he made a statement about this housing debacle that Mark Carney is investing billions in Vancouver, helping out BC, but not the rest of Canada here.
And also trying to fix a mess that they themselves let happen and then created and now capitalizing on it on top of it.
Well, it's artificially inflated housing prices and he won't let them come down. He's trying to turn the Canadian society into a renter's society.
You'll owe nothing and you'll be happy.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
But yes, as you were mentioning, let's start with Wealth Move saying, quote, when condos were making money, taxpayers didn't get a cut. Now they're losing money and taxpayers are expected to cover the bill. Poilievre's argument is simple. If developers took the risk, developers should take the loss. And again, I love when Pierre Poilievre says things like this, but at the same time, well, how long will it take for him to be able to do anything actionable on it? And as of now, at least 3 years, if not more, once he loses.
Yeah, I actually love these statements, and I love when Poilievre makes these statements. And I don't care if he can't make the change or he can make the change. This helps Alberta independence to have somebody on the national level pointing out all of Carney's mistakes.
True.
Now, let's just quickly recap how we got here. The Liberal Party caused the worst housing bubble in the world and the worst in Canadian history over the last 7 years. They doubled housing costs. They rose faster in Canada than in any other G7 country, by far, to levels we had never seen before. They did this by inflating demand with out-of-control inflation and money printing and blocking supply with bureaucracy and taxes on builders. So some of those builders thought they would sell into these high prices, but then the Liberal housing bubble burst. Now they're losing money, and instead of letting those losses go to the people who made the decisions, ultimately Mark Carney wants you to pay the price. And of course, this is not just developers, it's banks, because they are the ones who financed these projects in the first place and they risk losing on default. So in order to avoid that, we have the Prime Minister, a Liberal Prime Minister, forcing you to pay the price.
Yeah, no bailouts on banks and definitely no bailouts for real estate developers. This is absolutely ridiculous. Now, there's much more tighter regulations on Canadian banks, so you typically don't see the kind of bailouts that the U.S. sometimes gives. But with these condo developers, this is the last industry you should be given any kind of bailout to. The housing prices are artificially inflated and have been for decades in Canada. If people that haven't sold their house already should be selling their house because prices are eventually going to go down. This isn't going to stop anything from happening. This isn't going to incentivize real estate developers to build more condos. He's simply turning the condos that already exist into rental properties. And it looks like all the policies he's kind of bringing in wants to make Canada a renting society rather than increase the middle class through home ownership.
Yes, he's literally just spackling the same issues that they themselves created and allowed to come in again by letting in developers, international developers, mostly from China, and tied to interesting government agencies over there to build and build and build, and then nobody can afford them. Number one. Number two, they're poorly built as well. So once the few that do buy, well, then they have to sell real quick when they realize how badly everything is constructed, and then now they have to spackle up the holes by using it as the housing that they had promised they were going to build. They're not building it, they're just buying the ones that nobody else wanted.
Yeah, it's very interesting you say China because a lot of this money is real estate developers from China. And why are we bailing out Chinese investors? Why are we bailing out real estate companies, period? And on top of that, I used to help build high-rise condos within Vancouver, and they are very poorly built. They always know which unit is going to be tested on which floor for water leaks, so they make sure that one unit's good and all the rest have water leaks, which eventually create mold within the units. This is why you have such a mold issue, not in just Vancouver, but all of Canada.
But all of North America, I would say, except Mexico, because here we build with cement mostly.
Yeah.
But even we had mold issues for about 2 years without even knowing. And then we had to move out real quick right before we did the bigger move over here to Mexico. But next, Michael Corvig says Canada's EVs for canola deal is not a normal trade agreement. It provides 5 years of EV market access in exchange for roughly 10 months of canola oil tariff relief, and an asymmetric deal where China holds the leverage once again. What did I just say that they were able to do within Canada when they were building and constructing and bringing in developers that were building just to build and then to be able to have their assets hold up in Canada?
Yeah, these are just bad deals Mark Carney is making. He's trying to sell these short-term deals as beneficial for Canada, but it's the long-term perspective which China's benefiting every time. He's moving away from the United States. It almost seems like he's trying to sabotage the Kuzma deal. Well, he's giving sweetheart deals to China over and over and over again. He needs to put all those Chinese deals on the table and just focus on the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge is that stabilizing relations with China is necessary, particularly when the world is as in much of an upheaval as it is. So I understand that, and I fully support that. The risk with the particular deal on electric vehicles is that it's not just a normal trade deal. It's 5 years of EV market access in return for about 10 months promised of restored canola access. It's asymmetric, and it's China that holds the balance of the leverage in it. We've given the Chinese a long-term foothold in a strategic industry, and that's the key thing that the Chinese Communist Party understands, that Canadians need to understand. These are not just consumer goods. It's a strategic sector that China will use for leverage. So the challenge is that stabilizing.
Well, and then they're inviting them into the manufacturing side on top of this. Now, they say it has to be 51% owned by a Canadian, but that could just be a Chinese person that immigrated to Canada, got the citizenship, and now the ownership will go in their name. So technically, it would be almost all owned by the CCP. And again, when you invite the Chinese in for manufacturing, they're going to benefit in the long term, where Canada loses here.
But also, all the while, they continue to do the elbows up with the U.S. and they continue to try to get closer and closer with China as they complain that the U.S. and the deal with the U.S. isn't working and that they're not even starting the conversations that Mexico is about to be finishing on this end. And Mexico did understand that it was necessary to kick China out, impose 75% and higher tariffs on the EVs that we were being flooded with, and start looking towards the market in the U.S. because we understood that a lot of that manufacturing and production might also benefit us if we're able to continue to be nice to the U.S., which Canada apparently cannot do. And then they'll end up holding the bag with China and listening to China and only being able to look at China when China does continue to take advantage of Canada.
Let's say China one more time, Nat.
China. Just for the YouTube censors. But now let's go back to your comments and then to Alberta Stay Free. Rage Against Machine says tax strike now. I mean, even if you withheld tax for 1 month, you'd be doing a lot better in Canada.
Well, no, there's actually a way to withhold taxes, and there's a big movement within the UK to do this. There's a website. I'll get the website for next time. I don't know if it's possible in Canada, but it's called Withhold Taxes for War, and they're going under the idea that the UK is funding wars, and by UN law, you don't have to pay taxes if your country is funding a war. You can withhold the taxes. So there's thousands of people in the UK currently signed up to this movement. And it's been going on for quite a while now. Nobody's been prosecuted on. So it's going to be very interesting how successful that movement actually is.
Oh, and also Smell to Life Every Day, thank you so much for becoming a member. Monthly member. Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
And lovely
Thank
to
you.
see you here as well. And says, hi, Nat and Guy. Hello, and thank you for being here.
And I will also say this. We shouldn't have to withhold taxes, especially in free and independent Alberta. Once that happens, there should be no taxes on citizens, period. Any country that has a similar resource base that has less resources than Alberta doesn't have taxes on their citizens. We go over this quite often. Should be something that we're promoting. The Canadian government has absolutely no answer for this. We're saying no taxes on citizens. The Canadian government saying 50% tax and up on not only citizens, but everything within the country.
But also, don't you dare leave, or we'll charge you even more. Don't you dare die, or we will also charge you and your family members. We just played something similar as to how those having a business in Canada and passing away works nowadays, apparently. Stephen Jensen, thank you for being here, says, damn, sorry I'm late. That's okay. Thank you for
We're
being
just
here.
glad to have you here.
Yes. And Sean says, Carney does what's good for Carney, and he is tied with the CCP. The Chinese EVs will unalive Canadians who actually trust Carney. And I mean, we continue to see the same types of EVs that will start being imported into Canada catch fire now here in Mexico 5 years on from the massive imports that we saw initially.
Yeah, everybody sees the salacious headlines of Chinese cars catching fire. I'm actually less concerned about that. And when you actually start researching the subject in a country that had a huge adoption of Chinese vehicles, bigger adoption almost than any country that has the same weather conditions as Canada, these things did nothing but break down. They're refusing to buy these cars now, and that was within Russia when all the sanctions came on. They did not manufacture their own cars inside Russia, so they were forced to buy everything from China. At first, everything seemed great within the first 12 months, and then after that, these things just started breaking down. Electric cars don't work well in snow, especially Chinese electric cars. When you put snow tires on electric cars, it's another huge problem.
And Stephen Jensen says the EVs will map the cellular and data networks in Canada. They will find weak spots in the system. And again, we also don't know what type of software they will be bringing in or what kinds of restrictions, if any, Canada will impose on them. Mexico had very low restrictions on the amount of data, etc., that these cars could collect, and yet now we're realizing how deep into the infrastructure, specifically, as you mentioned, they were able to go here in Mexico.
We're looking at almost 75% of all trade is done with the U.S. The next biggest trading partner is China. That's only 5%. After that, everything else, every other country is absolutely fractional. You're not going to replace the American market that you're connected to by land with one of the biggest borders in the world with China. You're at 5% with China, and anything you do is going to have to be shipped in freighter, which is going to increase from cost. China is also not a consumer culture right now. A very limited number of their citizens in their population are actually consumers. A lot of them just don't meet the poverty, are not above the poverty line right now.
And Rage Against Machine says, damn their taxation. And yes, then we should be doing more about that. And Sean says, electric cars don't work very well in the cold. That's what makes Canada a bad market. And also what makes Canada wanting to go full zero emissions, full green policies, also dumb, because it makes no sense when thinking about cold weather environments where you do need the other types of fuels still.
Well, we're going to talk about Canada's energy sector, and I like the overall direction they're going with one particular thing, and that is nuclear. They're going to make big investments. The problem with their nuclear program is they want to invest in big nuclear rather than small and medium nuclear, which the U.S. and a lot of other countries are investing in. When you invest in big nuclear, there's a big price tag on that, and a lot of corruption comes with that, and it keeps all the power within the hands of the big corporations and the government. If you're going to go to nuclear, I think you need to go small and medium-sized reactors.
And a few more comments. Philip Vespa says, of course, the suspect in the Montreal event was an Albertan. I fear Carney will try to link him to independence and label entities like Stay Free Alberta, organizations. Okay, you go.
I was telling Nat last night, I said, from now until October 19th, any incident that happens with a firearm is going to be, they're going to attempt to link it to Alberta independence. This is absolutely ridiculous. We have a story later where we're going to talk about it, and it looks like the guy was far more left-leaning than he was right-leaning. The one little thing they want to try to connect to right-leaning was he was an incel, but if you read that entire thing, he looks like a left-wing incel.
And I will also say it's good that Rebel News did get the whole manifesto and is now able to clarify the things that the mainstream media was omitting when they were reporting on it initially by saying and painting him in a very specific light that they usually always do. Philip Vespa also says, oh, look, it's the do-nothing loudmouth federalist conservative. Independence solves all the problems Carney has created. And you mean PP or Pierre Poilievre. And exactly.
Yeah, and Pierre Poilievre can't affect change, but I kind of really liked what happened because it was like him and Danielle Smith came out as this federal alliance, and they came out for a couple of days, and then they haven't said anything since then because their polling dipped, and they didn't like all the pushback they were getting online, and they were fracturing a lot of people from the West. That's British Columbia because there's an independence movement there as well, Alberta as well as Saskatchewan. We hold all the same first principles, yet it's citizens trying to enact the change that the government absolutely failed on. So it's going to be interesting how many times they actually make a play and push against Alberta independence. I think you'll see smitters and smatters here and there, especially when we get close to October 19th, but I don't think they want to have a long-term sustained assault on Alberta independence because they know it will hurt their own political career overall.
And Beulah Hillier, thank you so much for being here, says, hi everyone watching from Alberta, and thank you so much once again for being here. But now, speaking of Alberta, let's go to Alberta Stay Free. Alberta Stay Free, yes.
Yeah, Alberta Stay Free.
There we go.
Sweet home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
And let's start with Corey Morgan saying, fits in nicely with the Bragg Creek landscape. And that is one of the, I was going to say posters.
Mid-sized billboard, I would say.
Thank you.
Absolutely
that says, send out a message, choose Alberta.
Absolutely fantastic messaging here, and it's nothing too inflammatory because we know they're already coming after billboards that are pretty milquetoast just like this, but this asks the right question. So if somebody maybe doesn't know that much about Alberta independence, this says it's a non-binding referendum basically, and send a message to Ottawa. Absolutely love it, and they should keep repeating this over and over. And I like these mid-sized billboards because they're going to be a lot cheaper.
And a lot harder to debate against.
Yeah.
But also being able to spark a conversation. And again, that is important still, especially for the people that are either on the fence or don't know much about it, being able to go there and look at what it even means. Or why is there a billboard there that says this? What message? Etc. But next, speaking of messages, Energy Media says, quote, Thomas Lukasik, Forever Canada, God, says Conservatives have promised to support the pro-Canada side, but he has not seen them campaigning yet. They must be so far behind me that I can't see them. Let's see what he says.
They're telling me that they're all behind me, but when I look back, they must be so far behind me that I can't see them yet, because they're nowhere to be noticed. I certainly hope that they will deliver on their promise and actually actualize it and start campaigning and making out strong statements. I think it's very important that particularly Conservative elected members, both provincially and federally, come out and state their position clearly. None of this sovereign Alberta within United Canada garbage, but actually say what they mean, because that would be a clear message to a lot of Albertans. I believe that the more campaigns there are out there, the better, because I will reach certain audience, but there is certain audience out of reach for me, and if they can reach that audience, that would be great. But so far, I have heard a lot of promises of how they will be campaigning, but I haven't seen anything on the ground yet.
Yeah, and I kind of just talked about this, and I think he's talking a lot about Poilievre and Danielle Smith, and he's expecting them to come out and campaign because they're going to reach the majority of that soft middle with their message. The fact that he's against that message, I think it's probably the best message that they have and the best chance they have, because I don't think they're going to get a lot of voters with Forever Canada and Lutsko. I think it's these conservatives like Danielle Smith and Pierre Poilievre that are really the A-team that actually have a chance to sway voters. But again, I don't think they want to come out with a hard campaign. I think they'll come out a week here or a week there, but they do not want to make it a sustained campaign like Forever Canada, because they see their poll numbers dropping, and they see conservative support fracturing as well. You have people that are forever conservatives, I would say, and then you have people that are really independence-minded and want what's best for their province.
But we also received an email, and we might read it tomorrow, look over it tomorrow, but it also seems like Thomas Lutsko might be having some issues with Elections Alberta because he might have not cleared or done the necessary steps to actually become a third-party advertiser. We'll see where that leads, but again, trouble just seems to continue to follow him because he does everything wrong. Even when he's trying to do things right and for Canada, he continues to do it wrong. And I will start using his messaging as well of Forever Canadian to go against it, and start making not posters, but things for social media that say Forever in Debt, etc., using the exact same font and look of his posters.
Yeah, and I will say he is really the front man for the B team. So if there's an opportunity to get rid of him because he's broken the rules, which he obviously has at this point, we need to kind of go after him. And it looks like a lot of things are starting to bubble up to the surface for Lutsko there.
But next, Alberta Fact Check says, quote, in an extended column for the CBC, Jason Markusoff implies that the tariff situation with the United States could be boosting the independence movement in Alberta.
Yeah, and I actually absolutely agree. I think the tariff situation is boosting Alberta independence, but Alberta independence has nothing to do with the tariff situation. Mark Carney has complete control over what goes on in USMCA. It almost looks like he's trying to sabotage it. If that is what he's trying to do, and I'm not saying that's what he is trying to do, but if it is, he's definitely going to help Alberta independence in the process. If this thing ends up getting canceled, it's massively going to help Alberta independence. But even if it goes to a year-on-year review, that's going to make major inconfidence within the business and manufacturing community within Canada. You're going to see a lot of corporations start to move to the United States at that point. That will also help Alberta independence, but not as much as a cancellation of the USMCA.
True. And next, sorry, I was checking something, so I didn't know what you were saying. Next, Alberta Prosperity Project says many Albertans are upset about the upcoming vote on separating, but the reason isn't what you think.
Yeah, and APP has been a little bit quiet after they got the signatures and things like that and submitted them. I'm glad to see a good advertisement coming out from them. So keep up the good work there.
Many Albertans are upset about the upcoming vote on separating, but not for the reason you might think. It's one of the questions on Alberta's October referendum ballot, an official but non-binding vote. People are saying the question itself is worded way too confusingly. Here's the official wording. Should Alberta remain a province of Canada? Or should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada? In plain English, this October's vote isn't binding, so the question is asking whether Alberta should one day hold an actual binding vote on separation. What do you think? Does this phrasing add unnecessary hurdles to an already confusing process?
I mean, yeah, which is what we said when she came up with this wording in the first place. But.
Well, yeah, it obviously adds unnecessary hurdles, number one. But number two, we say this is a non-binding referendum. Should we one day have a vote for a binding referendum, we need to make sure we're working on the other aspects so we can accelerate that binding referendum after October 19th. So it's not taking 2.5 years, which Danielle Smith and Mark Carney are now claiming. And they could possibly even lengthen it out further than that. We need 6 to 12 months. I talk about it a lot on the show. How do we do that? Taking over the UCP is one of those options.
But also being able to give, especially the younger people, the younger voters, and those that are already basically with one foot out the door or looking for other solutions, a little bit more peace of mind of, yes, there is something being done, and we are thinking of other ways and other mechanisms that we can use so it doesn't have to extend to, I wouldn't even say just 2 or 3 years. I would say they're going to try to stop it at every single point. And we've already seen it with the whole court, with what's happening in the courts and using the First Nations to do that. But I think they still have a lot of other avenues that they might try to use.
According to the federal government, there's 7 gates that we have to go through and 7 different steps. At each of those steps, steps. There's going to be multiple ways to delay this thing. We're just witnessing the first step of them trying to delay it. And the longer they delay, the more hurdles we have. If we accept a 2.5-year timeline, which they're suggesting, that means we also have to win the U.S. presidential election or hope the right person wins that will recognize Alberta as an independent nation in case they say no to a binding referendum. And we do have to declare unilateral declaration of independence at some point. So I'm not for a 2-year timeline. I'm for 6 to 12 months, 12 months being the longest. I know a lot of people within Alberta independence, a lot of the thought leaders say October 17th, 2027 is the date they're looking in, and I'm okay with that, but no longer than that.
And lastly, from Ivano DeFazio says, quote, Canada is in a controlled demolition, no longer a nation building, but a nation destruction.
And there is a ton of truth to what he says here. So
I've had 3 different MPs from 3 different regions independently basically tell me, almost using the same language, that Canada is in a controlled demolition.
Wow.
You know, our masters want, we're no longer nation building, we're nation destruction. So they need to destabilize the pillars of the society. It's literally the communist handbook, so that we can be remade into a communist nation. So you have to get God out of the picture first, and that's the first thing they did. Yeah. They got God out of the schools, they got out of our institutions. Yeah. They basically demonized Christianity. So you got to do that. You got to destabilize the family. They have to destabilize us economically. The biggest obstacle is always the middle class. And in Canada, the middle class is most of their wealth, which is their power, is in the equity of their homes, is in the equity of their land.
And we'll continue to play this, but this is why I put that home ownership right off the top with what Pierre Poilievre was saying and what Mark Carney is doing to try to turn Canada from an ownership to society into a renter society. He's also putting they're looking to put inheritance tax and everything else, so homes can't be passed down from one generation to another without a severe cost to it.
So they have to destroy that. As you know, other governments, when they get to the point we're going to go full-blown communism, well, they actually just pass a law outlawing private property, and all of a sudden you don't own your land anymore. Right? So that might not go over well in Canada. So I've been talking about how, no, actually, they're going to overlay Aboriginal title onto our title and basically make our equity meaningless, and so confuse ownership so that we really have no meaningful ownership. We have no meaningful equity. Well, now we're in a communist.
Yeah, and there is actually another part to that. They're really trying to implement the Chinese model, but they're trying to do it through First Nations or the Indigenous. They want to go to 99-year leases. Right now, actually, Indigenous do sell to the public, but they sell on a 99-year lease basis. Much is the same model for the CCP in China. Ownership in China doesn't mean you actually own it. It means you lease it for 99 years.
And very similarly to one of the plans that Mark Carney was implementing over in England, in the UK, when he was also head of the Bank of England, where it was a managed destruction and decline. And we see they're just a few years ahead of Canada. But essentially, you can look at what happened there, and then you can look past that to what happened in Cuba and Venezuela to see where the future actually lies and where the plans that they're already basically telling you they're doing will lead to. I mean, we already know where this leads to. Again, it is the playbook that they already have. That it's the socialist to communist pipeline, and we're already on the socialist bit.
Well, it would have gone a lot faster and a lot smoother if Donald Trump hadn't gone in office. He's throwing a monkey wrench into this whole Western idea of they're going to move towards socialism and communism in a very quick manner by a controlled destruction of their own economy. That's what they want. They want people absolutely desperate and destitute, and then they're going to give them hope through communism.
By essentially gifting them money or ways to control them. A small amount of UBI or a small amount of money to sustain them so they're comfortable enough where they don't complain, but also where the federal government still continues to retain all of the power now. Yeah. But now we'll go back to your comments and then to Alberta Politics. Rage Against Machine says, don't need EVs or want China's garbage. No, me either.
No, and nobody does.
And also says, fabricating a narrative against independence. Yeah, with what happened in Montreal, and I assume and foresee that they will continue to do that with whatever opportunity that is presented to them, or just fabricating one, as you say. Stephen Jensen says, omitting, damn right, lying about it. Exactly, yeah. I said omitting, just Is the first word that came to my mind. But Rage Against Machine says PP has made 30 million. How? By being very ineffective, apparently, but people still continue to support him because he's isn't it sad that PP is the one hope for most conservatives within Canada, and that is the one thing they have to look
Yeah, but
up
the
to
question
and
here
forward to.
is, how did you make 30 million as a politician? That's what people want to know. Obviously, he's looking more and more like controlled opposition, especially if he has $30 million. Now, I haven't verified that. This is the first time I heard it, but if that's the case, that is very concerning, and I would want him to be looked into just like Mark Carney and everybody else. And why would I want him looked into? Because I want somebody there that isn't controlled opposition at this point, if that's even possible. I don't think that's possible in Canada, and that's why I'm all for Alberta independence.
And Todd says Thomas Lukasik is supposed to be disqualified for breaking the rules and being fined. Yeah. And yet we don't really see or know if Elections Alberta is even looking into it at this point.
I don't know if I put it in the Alberta Personality section or not, but Jason Levine uncovered some very interesting things where they're trying to backdate his organization and his registration. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit tomorrow.
Stephen Jensen also says he is registered now over the weekend as a third-party organizer or organization or association. What's going to happen to all the funds he illegally collected? Should be confiscated. I will have to say allegedly, because I don't know how legally Thomas Lukasik can get. But yeah.
Well, and this is the other thing. Yeah, he's registered now, but it looks like they tried to backdate his registration. If I'm looking at this evidence right now, I'll have to look into it a little bit more before we bring it on the show. Again, maybe tomorrow. But that maybe they're trying to backdate it so he can keep all that money.
And Todd says, no, disqualified and fined, period.
Yeah, and that's what should be happening here.
And Todd says Thomas should have been told to kiss his little campaign goodbye, but no, it's okay because you're on the Federalist side. Rules for thee, but not for me. Yeah. And exactly, yet they look into every single thing on the other side because that is another mechanism they can use to go against independence. Rage Against Machine says unilateral declaration of independence now.
Yeah, and we need to start looking towards that because I'm telling you this.
At least planning.
I'm hearing a lot of people within Alberta independence completely against the idea. And what I'm saying is we have to have the ability to use that idea, and we have to start moving towards what comes after October 19th and after that and working at all these things simultaneously. If we just look at October 19th and then just look at the UCP convention and then look at a leadership review and we do things one thing at a time, we're playing checkers while the other side is playing chess, meaning they're thinking 7 moves ahead of us, and we can't allow that to happen. That's one of the reasons we need to be buying up UCP memberships so we own the vote after October 19th.
And we should be the side that is 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. And again, having all those different plans. It doesn't just have to be unilateral declaration of independence, but having that at least on the mindset or on the table as to what do we do if and when, I will say, the federal government does stall or completely stop independence. Because again, this movement has been going on for 90 years and yet still here we are.
Well, I talked about this yesterday, and the mechanisms we need to have unilateral independence or declare unilateral independence is we have to buy UCP memberships, take over the UCP, and eventually have a leadership review on Danielle Smith, get somebody in there that is willing to make that declaration. But those same mechanisms that we need to control and we need to start working towards give us a lot of other options other than unilateral declaration of independence. It can start putting sovereignty policies on the table, like stop giving remittance payments to the federal government between the first referendum and the second referendum by simply passing a bill. This will create an upheaval with the federal government. It will make them take us to court and show their true colors to the Canadian public. Right now, they want to pitch everything like, oh, you already have your sovereignty, you have your independence. We're a united Canada, we're stronger together. We need to start implementing policies, especially after October 19th, between the first referendum and the second referendum that makes the federal government take action against us, because that's what you call Trump-like media exposure there. We can talk about things all day. The mainstream media isn't going to pick it up until we take political action that forces the mainstream media to talk about these issues.
And Stephen Jensen says that happened in Comox with the manufactured home park on Comox First Nations land earlier. Yes, 50-year lease running out, and now they have to move and have nowhere to move their homes to. Exactly. And the examples are already there. In British Columbia, it's already there. And while there was a tiny win a week ago, I think, they still haven't clarified what happens to the actual land title and people's private properties.
Yeah, absolutely. And these 99-year leases are also starting to run out in British Columbia as well.
The Comox Valley in British Columbia.
No, there's another one on the North Shore. That's the one I was originally talking about as well.
Thomas Muse says, good afternoon, Freedom People. Hello, and thank you for being here. Says Todd Blanche in the States today announced they are about to arrest 455 persons in the health industry. I drink to that.
Yeah, I was seeing that there is a ton of things going on right now. They are moving at light speed with prosecutions and kicking off a lot of investigations, not just against Gavin Newsom, but a lot of people that have been hiding a lot of money. And going into the midterms, it's going to be real hard to steal these midterms. Also with the SAVE Act, they're taking 25 million people off the voter registry. These would be dead people, people that are illegal immigrants, people that shouldn't be voting in the first place. The Democrats are in an uproar about this, but these are people that shouldn't have been voting in the first place. So they're really showing their hands when they're saying they're against taking these people off the voter rolls.
Oh, no, he means about to arrest 455 people in the health industry.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. What I'm saying is all this goes towards the midterms, and that's why you're seeing all this stuff come out now, especially with all the stuff with, how do I say this, the Jibby Jab labs and stuff like that as well.
And Stephen Jensen had said, and sorry I didn't read it, that the 4x8 Cory Morgan signs are $55 each to make if you order 1,000.
Fantastic.
And okay. Oh, Mike Freedom Honey. Hello, and thank you for being here. It says smash the like button. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
and it really does help out. But now, speaking of, let's go to Alberta Politics. That's 3, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
Let's start with from Melanie Bennett saying the very same museum, ladies and gentlemen. And this is from, okay, let's.
Well, and this is the thing. They go after parental rights in so many ways, and this is how we need to counter this. We need to be protecting parental rights. I've been talking about parental rights for a long, long time since we used to volunteer with Billboard Chris. Parental rights have been under attack for well over a decade. This is an issue that's really flying under the radar.
Canada's Human Rights Museum has said that parental rights activism is rooted in homophobia and transphobia. The Canadian Human Rights Museum has launched a social media campaign asserting that the parental rights movement is, quote, often rooted in transphobia and homophobia and can have harmful consequences. The post marked International Transgender Day of Visibility. The museum said it was, quote, confronting 4 myths surrounding the parental rights movement so that we can all help protect 2S LGBTQIA+ youth. The museum defines the parental rights movement as trying to remove the rights of 2S LGBTQIA+ students, including policies that would require schools to notify parents about pronoun and gender changes in school.
And that is an absolute fantastic policy. The fact that a museum would come out against that policy,
human rights,
that is going to create an uproar within communities overall. And it's just ammo for channels like us.
One post says that when students are forced to come out to their family, they risk family conflict, violence, rejection, and homelessness. It states that the language used by critics, including the term groomer, is part of a harmful process called othering. And the campaign cites this 2025 court case where an Ontario court ordered a person to pay $380,000 in damages after a Facebook post that accused 2 drag queens of being groomers and PDF files. And the museum says that while the charter protects freedom of religion and conscience, it says that, quote, the best interest of the child supersedes any parental belief or preferences. The campaign says that as long as humans have existed, there have been more than 2 genders. Many Indigenous peoples in Canada have always recognized what we know now as
okay, and we can leave it there. And this is, again, them trying to rewrite history. Because we used to volunteer with Billboard Chris so much, we know a lot about this particular subject. They have changing rooms. They're not just hiding the identity and the pronouns from parents. They literally have alternative changing rooms at the school where they hold clothes for these students so they can get changed behind their parents' back and really adopt new identities and confuse these children at a very, very young age.
But also they're telling on themselves by saying that parents wanting to have the ultimate say over their own children, which is how it's worked for centuries and how it should continue to work, goes against the rights or is transphobic. That is in itself telling of how they see both the parents but also the people that are complaining that their human rights are being violated if they cannot have access to somebody else's child. So that is very telling on them. And they never really realize it when they're trying to go against parents, for example, or people that complain. But in the end, and now with the new imports that we're seeing more and more, and that are looking more and more similar to those that are being imported into England, for example, it'll be very interesting given their religions and what they believe and don't believe.
We have a story on that later, actually.
I know. But what the merging of these two communities will look like now that they have to respect them more than they respect their own local people.
Well, also affirmation...
With common sense. Sorry.
Well, also affirmation therapy is the only therapy that's accepted when it comes to these young people, and it's absolutely ridiculous, and it is hurting families. It's actually separating families at a certain point.
It's on purpose.
There was an actual case that we were following. We went to the courthouse where one father, for a long time, didn't know the pronoun of the child, then was told, then refused to use those pronouns, and he was a good father, never had any abuse, anything like that, and then the child was separated from him. Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, funnily enough, we can't even mention that person's name still on YouTube because we could get in trouble. So that is how far they've gone in Canada. Even removing the names of the parents that want to protect their own children by not having to call them by a made-up pronoun that the school taught their children to use. Sorry. Let Alberta Decide says, quote, "The drain never stops. Alberta's wealth is being extracted in real time, climbing by about $634 every second. That is money leaving Alberta families, workers, and businesses. Send this to one Albertan who still thinks Ottawa is giving us a fair deal."
Yeah, and she's trying to claim that we have $400 billion to separate. It's going to cost us far more than that, and that is a completely made-up number that she's not trying to show or work on, that being Danielle Smith. But it's going to be far more than that the longer we wait, especially with the economic cliff and the dollar going in the direction that it is. This was a fantastic little advertising campaign, if you can go to the top there, by Let Alberta Decide.
And again, it's just a counter that continues to go.
And that's all. It needs to be something simple like that. It's it makes things very, very obvious. And the inflation numbers that came out today were at 3.2% for Canada, which is higher than expected. But for Alberta, it was at 3.7%, some of the highest inflation in all of Canada. And this is just another reason for independence.
And again, many people still within Alberta, because I have seen the comments and people either being shocked or saying, no, it's not true, don't really know how much money does leave Alberta and what it's being used for and who is the one taking it.
Yeah.
And yet they want to claim that they want to stay in Canada.
They know who's taking it. It's the federal government. It's who they're giving it to. We have a list of countries they're giving it to later, and it is long.
And provinces. RMC86 says, quote, "What the next generation of voters are saying about Canada's economy. Quote, a meal at McDonald's is $20, kind of crazy. It's really bad. Not fun to think about as a kid." And it goes on, young, middle-aged, old, nothing goes back down, puts holes in your pockets. The money runs out before the month does.
Even kids are feeling the bite.
Like, even at McDonald's right over there, like, I'm trying to buy a meal, it's like $20, which is, like, kind of crazy for me.
It's really bad. Yeah, it's not fun to think about as a kid.
Nothing goes back down. Since the pandemic, it all seems to go up.
It's bad. It's putting more holes in your pocket. That's the thing.
Overall, the cost of food also jumped 4.3%, but fresh veggies, 9%.
Pretty well everything. Yeah, fruit, vegetables, everything seems to keep going up and up.
Even tomatoes, they've gone way up.
Bank of Canada might like those numbers, but for the average Canadian, it's still a grind.
The money runs out before the month does.
We're focusing on the wrong item. The issue is, why aren't our incomes keeping pace anymore with inflation? And that issue rests with productivity.
The solution to that, says economist Moshe Lander, is increased competition between provinces and industries like food retail, telecoms, and energy suppliers, something he says governments, both provincial and federal, have promised but failed to deliver.
And it's not even that the incomes aren't keeping pace, because if you look at American wages and Canadian wages, they're somewhat comparable, but it's the amount of taxes being taken out is absolutely ridiculous in Canada. And this is why I keep saying no taxes on citizens in a free and independent Alberta. Infrastructure will be built by taxing natural resources as well as large and medium-sized businesses, not small businesses, because we want families to start small businesses and have benefits of having no taxes on those very small businesses, meaning 3 to 4 employees or less.
But also speaking of productivity, who on earth wants to invest into Canada right now, both given the state of the economy, but also the restrictions imposed upon anybody that tries to do anything productive in Canada? Why are most of the good and bigger businesses leaving for the US? Because they know that that's where they have a better opportunity, have to pay less taxes and have way less restrictions when they want to be productive and actually move the economy around.
Well, 47% of businesses are actually started from Canada, are started in the United States at their founding because they want to avoid the long-term risk of Canadian tax system.
But now I'll go back to your comments and then to Alberta Personalities. Todd says, well, Mark's got me down to 1 meal a day in an attempt to get ahead. Doubt I will ever. Doubt I will. Every previous attempt has failed. And I'm sorry to hear that. And Todd says, bacon and eggs and hash browns, bag of apples, banana once in a while.
Well, if Mark Carney's 1 meal a day is costing like $10,000.
How much was it? $175,000 he spent on like
3 meals.
3 meals on a plane.
Now, it wasn't just him, it was everybody on the plane. But how do you spend that much money? That's more than multiple Canadians will make in a year.
Exactly. I couldn't even think of me ever making that when I lived in Canada. Todd says, my stomach is all accustomed to 1 a day. All of a sudden, not really hungry. Outside that, not sure it affects my body, but I guess we'll find out. And people should not be having to live this way. And that's the thing. Not. And I think Canadians, again, have gotten, not meaning you, Todd, but Canadians in general have gotten so used to being just okay enough. And Canadians are kept just comfortable enough where they won't complain to the extent that they should be complaining, and especially if they looked at how it is done elsewhere in the world. I continue to talk about right now the World Cup, and I've been following all the games and I'm really getting into it. Apparently my Mexican spirit is coming out and now I care about soccer or football. But I've been continue to see videos of Europeans and even Canadians going to the US and saying everything I've seen on the news and that I was told about America is not true. And I love America and I love what's going on here and I love the way people live and how friendly people are. And it's not just that they're going to the bigger cities that, yeah, they kind of do suck, but any big city sucks. But they're going to middle America. They're going to Kansas. They're going to random places in the middle of America. People from Scotland, people from England, people from Italy, and that are following the soccer games and saying, life is so much better here that I didn't imagine because I bought the propaganda that I kept being sold to in my own country to keep me pacified to the fact that our life is so much worse where we live, but we're told it's so much better because we're better than America. Thank you so much to Smile to Life every day for the $2 super chat saying, shop at your local farmers market. Yes, and that too. And being able to make those connections with the principal first producers of food. And there's still, hopefully, still quite a few farmers within Alberta that are still producing.
The whole system needs to be rethought. I was watching the host of Top Gear, and I forgot the name of the show he did, but he rethought the entire mechanism of distribution for small farmers. And that mechanism for distribution needs to be rethought and owned and controlled by the farmers as a collective overall, meaning they need to start cutting the middleman out so Canadians know exactly where their food's coming from. It's the middleman that is really jacking a lot of these prices up, but it's also the federal government with the amount of onerous regulations on farmers, and they're absolutely poisoning food as well when it comes to cattle and things like that, and the amount of jibby jabs they want to throw into these animals.
I think that would be Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear. It's Jeremy's Farm, I think it's called.
Yeah.
I used to watch a lot of British TV. But
I was watching the entire history of that show.
He got in a lot of trouble for doing that.
Oh, absolutely amazing. And now he's controlling the entire farmers movement within the UK. I absolutely love what he did. I just started watching the history of it. I'm going to continue to watch that. Big fan of what he did. And that system needs to be replicated in other countries because the UK has massive regulation on farmers too. And if it can work there, it can work in almost any country because the countries where they don't have regulations like that, it's almost a shoo-in for it to work.
But again, he got in a lot of trouble for even daring to think that and televising it as well. Okay, Raging as Machine says, I drink a lot of coffee and VAPE, 1 meal, good to go. It's funny that I started eating more when we moved to Mexico, maybe because we had more ability to even eat more.
Well, it's a shame what's going on in Canada because people that couldn't afford to eat before would go to the food bank. I grew up very, very poor with my mother, and we used to go to the food bank all the time, but that used to be an option. Now the food bank's even saying you can only come once or twice a month. They're cutting down the amount of days you can come and the amount of food they're actually giving out because they're running short. And this is why the government is coming up with these ludicrous ideas of having having government-run grocery stores. Let's see how that turns out. Everybody has already taken a look at Cuba.
And yet we continue to see, that's the problem with these, it's harder to touch. And yet we continue to see.
You can use the big buttons if you want.
It's too far away. And yet we continue to see that students, for example, do continue to take advantage of food banks when the international students, when they should be having enough money to travel to Canada, study in Canada, and that should have been taken care of before they were admitted into the country to essentially take advantage of the system, which the system lets them do as well. Todd says, Mark Scott is on the coffee, VAPE, beer, and one diet. What happens when you got people stressed the F out? And again, they keep you pacified enough where there won't be a big revolution, but you also start to notice maybe a little bit how things have changed in the past few years. Hold on. Justin GP, hello, and thank you for being here, says, and we don't even get a say for where all our money goes here in Alberta due to the unequal representation. Oh, and hi, folks. Hello.
Well, and this is what I've been saying about if we can get Danielle Smith replaced as leader of the UCP after the first referendum, between the first referendum and the second referendum, we can maybe get somebody that's a leader that's going to implement policies that's going to put the federal government on a hot seat, like taking the money out of Ottawa banks, that's $700 million a week, put it in Alberta banks, make Alberta banks strong again, start cutting off remittance payments to Ottawa, and do a slew of other things that might not stick, but it's going to damn sure create a national conversation and force the federal government to take the opposite position, which is the position against sovereignty and against provinces.
But now, speaking of, let's go to Alberta Personalities, and then we'll continue reading the rest of your comments.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Let's start with,
and I had
Elliot Continental says, quote, the legacy media is misleading Canadians about the Montreal bang bang. Or incident, I will have to say.
Yeah, and we were looking at it last night, and they were coming hard at Alberta independence, trying to link the shooter there, claiming that he was right wing. When all was said and done, he's looking far more left wing than what was originally told by the mainstream media there.
Well, because Rebel News got a hold of the manifesto and actually published it for everybody to see instead of the small fragments that the mainstream media was letting out slowly.
Canadians, you need to watch this because this is a classic example of how the media misleads people. So yesterday there was a tragedy in Montreal. There was a shooter who started shooting out, and there was a police officer that was unalived, as well as a bystander, and the shooter himself was neutralized. This took place in the Côte-des-Neiges neighborhood, and that part of the city was on lockdown, on high alert. I actually was in Montreal myself while this was happening, and the individual left behind a manifesto. Now, this is what the legacy media reported about the manifesto yesterday. Here is a headline from Radio-Canada, the French version of Canada's state broadcaster CBC. Quote, the suspects subscribe to the incel ideology. The document is representative of the incel movement, a hateful ideology that calls for a violent revolution against the system for masculinist reasons. Now, when this news broke yesterday, I was visiting my grandmother as well as my great uncle and his wife, and we were playing dominoes, and they had the TV on in the background. And right away, my great uncle's wife said, this is masculinism, more example of right-wing radicalization. But what was left out of that CBC report, and what was confirmed this morning by Rebel News that released the full text, is that the manifesto, while yes, containing misogynistic elements, also had far left and anti-Semitic elements. Reading from Rebel News, the document condemns capitalism, describing modern Western societies as hypergamous. It states that capitalism is a system designed to extract value from the many for the benefit of the few, and claims that under capitalism, human beings are reduced to commodities. There's also anti-Semitic elements, stating that there are quote-unquote many Jews within the Western ruling class, which he called the Judeo-bourgeois class, and he also lamented the influence of Zionist Jews, that being Jewish people who support the State of Israel. As for his misogynistic comment, he lamented this idea that women only seek a small number of attractive men. So a summary of this, yes, there are misogynistic elements, but the far left and anti-Semitic elements also matter greatly. It matters because this took place in a Jewish neighborhood, and it matters because the legacy media omitted this from their reports, leading many to
and we
believe
can
that
leave
this
it
was
there. And I'm not actually concerned that if he's misogynist or he's not, or he's against capitalists or he's not. But the fact that they're trying to pin this on Alberta independence right off the get-go was absolutely ridiculous, especially when the full manifesto got out. The fact that this thing even got leaked, we've seen similar situations in the United States under Biden where they claimed these were right-wing shooters, and the manifesto never came out until Trump got into office and made it a point to release a lot of those manifestos.
Yes, and again, it's funny that he is complaining that he can't find women and he's being misogynistic. However, he supports communism. Believe me, if you support capitalism, a lot more women will be attracted to you because you'll be able to produce much more. But moving on, Rebel News says, quote, the truth about land acknowledgements and why it's time to end them. We shouldn't even start.
Well, and this was a fantastic little segment that Drea Humphrey did for Rebel News here.
Are you going to give your land away to a group just because they're Indigenous?
Turn it up.
Then this report's not for you. Are you going to cut your children from the will to pass on your stolen land because a band says their ancestors picked berries near you? Then this report is also not for you. But if you know you didn't steal anything, you know all Canadians are connected to this land, and you're tired of divisive land acknowledgements professing that you believe otherwise, then boy, do I have a report for you, followed by a call to action at endlandacknowledgements.com. Drea Humphrey with Rebel News, and just because I'm not a historian doesn't mean I don't know history. So about a decade ago when I first...
And we'll show a little bit of the beginning. I do recommend going to watch the entire thing, but this is long past due. These land of acknowledgements, we needed to stand up right away. I was shocked when I used to live in British Columbia how many people just adopted these and were happy to adopt this.
And didn't even question them or what could happen or what the implications would be.
First started to hear the odd land acknowledgement mantra being recited by Canadians professing they're on stolen and unceded land, I quietly looked from side to side to gauge whether or not I was the only one who remembered that, Indigenous tribes colonized too. For example, the Iroquois Confederacy displaced rival nations to dominate the fur trade. Here in British Columbia, the Tlingit expanded their territory through war, and Haida Nation, aka Canada's Indigenous Vikings, well, they even took on their neighboring enemies as slaves. It would be absurd to place some sort of moral guilt on the descendants of such people and use that to challenge their legitimacy as Canadians or the legitimacy of Canada. And yet,
okay, and
here
you
we
can
are.
leave it there. And I really do recommend going to watch that entire thing because it blows apart their narrative, especially when they get into academia. They start rewriting the history books and putting a complete false narrative into children's heads from a young age going all the way up. So when they do hear the truth, they won't even recognize the truth for what it is, a reality that the government is trying to now cover up.
And again, that is endlandacknowledgements.com, and the report is by Drea Humphreys from Rebel News. And she's great, and she is mostly in the BC, Vancouver area, so she reports all the insanity going on over there. But I will also say with the whole land acknowledgements thing, and with the whole reinventing or rewriting history that they've been doing, even the language that now they're trying to replace a lot of streets and building names and everything with that they say is First Nations language or native language, they invented it at a university in the 1970s and 80s. At I believe the University of British Columbia, they just came up with the fact that this is the way that they probably used to speak, and this is the way that it should probably be written down. And then they started replacing names, starting with the university, a lot of names within the university, but then expanding it out, like replacing Trudge Street to, I don't even can even pronounce it, but then that came in with bunch of different issues when people couldn't receive their mail or make payments because nobody knew how to write, spell, or even find their street name.
It's not that you have to explain it a little bit better. They're using characters that aren't even on a modern keyboard to rename these streets. So billing companies, whether it was your gas, your credit card bill, they couldn't be mailed to your house. So a lot of people were going in debt over this. There were a couple of stories actually on the mainstream media of all places talking about this.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, from Sydney M. Brewer says, quote, every Canadian should read Sam Cooper's Willful Blindness. With TD Bank paying billions in U.S. anti-money laundering penalties and USMCA talks on the horizon, still not yet though, Canada's record on financial integrity is becoming an international issue.
Well, and we had a viewer last night talk about this. I grabbed a clip from it.
And now they want to bail out these developers on the backs of the Canadian taxpayers at prices which are artificial to create and support an artificial market. And the only one who benefits from the artificial market are the CCP-backed developers in Vancouver, because this makes no economic sense. And it's amazing, frankly, that Carney and Gregor can go with a straight face and talk about this and just not describe it for exactly what it is. So it's amazing there aren't riots in the streets with everything that's going on up there. I mean, people can barely afford to eat, and instead of the government helping the people out, they're bailing out the CCP, who Carney cut back side door deals with.
Well, and there should be rioting in the streets in British Columbia at this point, but they are so pacified at this point, you're not going to see anything. And that's why we really don't see the British Columbia independence movement have the legs that it should have at this point. When we used to live out there, Matt, I was shocked at the names people would call me for pretty generic positions, I would say.
But now we'll go back into your comments and then to Alberta's Canada. Rage Against Machine says 70 cents of every dollar is stolen. And funnily enough, right now, the Canadian dollar is 63 cents to an American dollar. So even there. Yeah. I just checked because I needed to do a transfer.
Because I just checked the other day and it was at 71. You keep going, I'm going to check.
Or at
it
least
again.
that was the rate that they were giving me. Rage Against
that's because
Machine.
you're in Mexico, though.
Rage Against Machine says, retire more like expire, brother. You're just in the way for their plans, essentially. Rage Against Machine says, I'm selling everything. I think it's time to get out of this debt. And it's insane that people in Canada are living this way when still the government and those at the top proclaim that it's the best country in the world. It's better than the U.S.
No, it's at 70 cents.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, then I was getting
But
a
it's still
terrible
going
rate.
down. Every day it's going down now because it was just at 71 a couple days ago.
Rage Against Machine says, start our own bank, Republic Bank of Alberta.
Well, the Alberta banking system should be one of the most powerful in Canada, but because they deposit over $700 million in natural resource profits and other things into Ottawa banks, who do you think is getting powerful off the back of Alberta money? Not Alberta banks. That $700 million should be dispersed between multiple Alberta banks, not just one as well. So multiple banks will have the benefit of it.
And Jesse TP, thank you so much for the $13.99 super chat saying for your flag and studio fund. And I am waiting for the flag to replace this one, the U.S. one.
We're not replacing the U.S. flag. We're going to move that somewhere else in the studio.
You can have it behind you. I want the Alberta flag behind me. And the Mexican flag is too colorful, so I don't like that one. But thank you so much, Justin GP. And you will continue to see changes. And again, we're still moving and changing things. We haven't forgotten about our other set, don't worry. We will go back to that one eventually. But right now we're testing this one. Justin GP also says, weird, because I'm ugly and broke too. You're not ugly. I've seen a picture of you. But not a loon either, so I guess that's what keeps me from going berserk. And... that's the problem.
And again, if people are thinking about leaving Canada and things like that, or want to liquidate their assets, they need to do it quietly and then just leave. Because if you have these hard assets and then you tell the Canadian government you're going to leave, they're going to literally take their pound of flesh.
Sean says they aren't Indigenous. They have not been on the land since time immemorial. Or memoriam, we are all descendants from the same small area in Eastern Africa. That has been disputed, though. I won't get into it because YouTube doesn't like it when we talk about this. But look into it as well. Rage Against Machine says China. Exactly. And I can't do it as well as Derek from the Unacceptable Fringe can, but I mean, I try. James Hunt says, I agree. Dead people should not be allowed to vote. No, and it's a miracle that they are. It's a miracle
and it's
that they can
absolutely
vote.
fantastic that they're finally cleaning up the voter rolls in the United States. It's just a damn shame that they have 5 or 6 states where you need no voter ID. And not only do you not need a voter ID, they refuse to take an ID if you try to offer one. There was hidden cameras from the last election, but that's state law. That's absolutely ridiculous. This is how you're getting so many illegal migrants voting and how you're getting these voter rolls with people that shouldn't even be on them.
A 2.0 says, just shut up and eat the bugs. Yes, here in Mexico, we do eat bugs, though. And I love seeing all the tourists coming here for the World Cup and trying grasshoppers.
I do not eat the bugs.
Grasshoppers are good. No. But thank you so much, Smiles Alive Every Day, for the $5 super chat saying, I have to say Alberta is great to live in and we're still better than the rest of Canada. Oh, yes, of course, 100%.
Absolutely, but we need our independence, and that's what we're fighting for here.
You have to preserve it. You have to be able to preserve that greatness. And I mean, quickly, Canada wants to not just take over it, take a hold of it, but also take advantage of it more than it already does.
I mean, Danielle Smith, we showed the clip yesterday. She wants to take that population from 5 million to 10 million, and she was extremely enthusiastic about it. Now she wants to go back on it because she tries to ride a populist wave without actually implementing those populist policies, meaning she wants to add 9 questions. But when she wanted to increase the population from 5 million to 10 million, she didn't have to ask 9 questions. She just was doing it. And that's what we need, somebody in that leadership role that Danielle Smith currently occupies that will just implement things and stop asking permission from the federal government. Get the UCP to pass the bill and then piggyback off of that to take sovereignty back from for Alberta.
But thank you so much, Smiles Alive every day. And again, if the Alberta independence movement was already at least starting, or if we knew more about it at the time and it was more publicized, we would have, of course, first looked towards Alberta before, when we were looking to escape Vancouver and British Columbia.
Well, it's a damn shame that this is a non-binding referendum. I really wish it was a binding referendum. There was a ton of enthusiasm coming from conservatives across the nation that wanted to move to Alberta. There was people from Central and South America that had already fled Canada that said they're going to move back and they're going to move to Alberta to vote in that binding referendum. When that binding referendum eventually does come around, that we need to make an appeal to those people, because those people have gone really quiet since this became a non-binding referendum.
And thank you so much, Rage Against Machine, for the $10 super chat
you.
saying Republic of Alberta, let's effing go. And
Absolutely.
yes, let's go as quick as we can. Speaking of going, unfortunately now let's go to Alberta's Canada. We call it that way because Alberta is the only thing still keeping Canada there. 5 or 4?
Whatever you want.
I don't remember which one it was. 5, I think?
Yeah, it might be 5.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
I have a little thing here with numbers that tells me which one it is, but I always forget which one is
Well,
which.
I'm supposed to put the numbers before the chapter marker so you know, but I keep forgetting to do it.
Yes, so thank you. But let's start with J. Gen Xer says, quote, Mark Carney told Canadians to, quote unquote, judge me by the prices at the grocery store. He said it deliberately. He wanted a simple, everyday benchmark that every family feels. And believe me, they're feeling it. He positioned himself as the guy who would finally fix affordability after years of the Trudeau-era pain. He did not. He made it worse.
And again, this is about the inflation that came out today, and 3.2% is above what they projected, and it's not acceptable. But it's one thing to have 3.2. For Alberta, it's a completely another thing. It's at 3.7%. Why does Alberta have some of the highest inflation in Canada? This is absolutely ridiculous. It's a failure on the federal government's part, but it's also a failure on Danielle Smith's part, accepting these carbon taxes and things like this. What you're going to see here is the mainstream media trying to blame this on oil prices. If it was blamed on oil prices, Alberta has infinite oil under their feet. Why are they paying the inflation rate if it's oil prices? Because it's ultimately not. It's government policies.
Canada's inflation rate has risen to more than 3%. And if you own a vehicle, you may not be surprised to hear what's driving the rate of inflation. Statistics Canada reporting the consumer price index increasing 3.2%.
Oh, you have to turn it up.
More? Okay.
Year over year in May. This is up from 2.8% in April. And of course, the first time we've broken that 3% mark in 3 years. And we talked about the higher price of gasoline, main driving factors there. On a year over year basis, it rose at a faster pace, in fact, in May compared to April. And that is, of course, due in part mainly to the war in the Middle East in terms of those rising gas prices, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz as well, of course, playing a big factor in all of that. And what economists are also watching for very closely is the cause of the surge in inflation and whether it remains entirely contained to energy prices or is it spilling over into other areas. And I want to switch over to produce because that is where we're seeing some of those early indications. The price of vegetables rising 9% in May compared to last year. Things like broccoli, cauliflower, tomatoes, and lettuce are some of the big drivers. But there you go. I want to highlight tomatoes. They jumped up 45%, which is huge. And
there's multiple, it's almost over, but there's multiple ways to reduce food prices extremely quickly. And when Alberta gets its independence, you're going to see that tariff-free trade with the United States. Well, we set up our own independent food system. But when you get tariff-free trade with the United States, that's going to reflect at the supermarket shelves.
Canada is noting this due to supply contractions in Mexico stemming from poor weather and a reduction in planted acreage following the implementation of U.S. tariffs.
Funny that we haven't really seen that much reduction or that many big price increases here in Mexico, even though they're blaming us for
I'm surprised
no
they
tomatoes.
said, I'm surprised they blame it on weather in Mexico rather than just say climate change, because they love to blame it on climate change any chance they get.
Yeah, it has been raining a lot here, though. But our tomatoes don't seem affected as much. I don't eat them, though. I don't like them. But next, Craig Lubimov says, non-mortgage debt also is skyrocketing in Canada. Households added an average of $2.75 billion every single month in new debt since January 2025. When you look at this chart, keep in mind that Canada's population has shrunk in 3 quarters, according to the government.
Yeah, and this is why I put Carney on the cover, drinking his own tears here, because all these numbers are compiling, and he likes to rely on a certain number here or a certain number there to try to portray things different than they are. But even those statistics he typically relies on, which inflation being under 3% was one of them, he can no longer rely on that. He's running out of lies to sell to the Canadian public. And the Canadian public, I think they're waking up, and that's the problem. His polling numbers keep going up, even though the economy keeps going down, because people are fleeing the country. That's what's happening. And you're losing that critical mass of individuals you're going to need to vote him out of office in 3 years. 3 years is a long, long time away. And I think a lot more people are going to leave Canada. This is why it's important for Alberta to get a binding vote on independence in a quick manner after October 19th.
Because again, that can happen I would even say in a much faster fashion if people within Alberta do feel that there is now no chance or no opportunity to move forward for independence after the non-binding referendum, which is why it's always good to have not just one, but a few plans in your back pocket that you can even tell people, hey, this and this and this might also help us and work out.
Yeah.
Or help us achieve it faster. Melissa says, quote, wow, Canada has fallen behind on income growth, ranking last in the G7. Once again, one other thing for us to rank last in the G7 and 32nd of 35 OECD countries. 2 massive problems in Canada, high taxes and low wages. Nothing good comes from that combination. Well, something good might come for the government, which is being able to keep the people pacified with a universal basic income managed with all the taxes they take.
Well, and it's only going to get worse and worse and worse here. It's not like Carney's bringing this around and it's a hiccup in the road. When Donald Trump took office, there was a little hiccup in the road because of the system Joe Biden kind of set up there. He was trying to collapse the economy and run to the arms of the CCP, much like Mark Carney is doing now. But a year and some change later, Donald Trump has turned the ship around. Their numbers are looking completely different than the Canadian numbers at this point.
At one point, Canada was quite a bit far above the rest of the G7, or at that time, I'm guessing G8 countries. But now, complete opposite. And it just took a few years, decades, I would say. But lastly, CBC Watcher says, quote, CBC's David Thurton just dropped a glowing piece on Mark Carney's, quote, big nuclear announcement, but somehow forgot to mention Carney's massive conflict of interest. Instead of leveling with Canadians, they ran an anti-nuclear Greenpeace crowd.
And again, this is not the kind of nuclear we need. We see the United States investing in small nuclear reactors as well as medium-sized nuclear reactors, because private industry will build a lot of these nuclear reactors in quick succession. When you invest in projects like this, these are taking 10 to 15 years to come online. There's a ton of corruption involved in this. Major energy corporations as well as the government have complete control over this, so it consolidates more power in their hands. Ultimately, small and mid-sized nuclear reactors seem to be the future. I am glad to see they're opening their minds at least to nuclear, but they're opening their minds to the wrong kind of nuclear. And the reason they want to go for this is they want to consolidate power within the government, not within the people or private corporations.
Let me just finish reading that because it's important. Buried in the online story footnotes, Carney's got stock options and deferred shares in Brookfield Corporation and Brookfield Asset Management, now in a blind quote-unquote trust. Wink, wink. Oh, and Brookfield just happens to co-own a reactor design that directly competes with CANDU or CANDU. Thurton did manage to note the new reactors, quote-unquote, won't come cheap, a casual $100+ billion price tag. Nothing to see here, folks, just a potential Brookfield Carney windfall in the making. CBC sins of omission, and similar to what happened in Montreal as well, not a mention on air all day.
And bonuses for Mark Carney is what that looks like.
Well, Ottawa has unveiled this country's nuclear strategy today, one the federal government hopes will help it meet its goal to double the country's energy grid by 2050. David Thurton now with the plan and the pushback.
The federal government looking to expand Canada's nuclear industry.
We are writing the next chapter in one of Canada's greatest industrial success stories.
The federal energy minister unveiled Ottawa's nuclear energy strategy. Its top priority, to begin construction on up to 10 large nuclear reactors, 2 by 2035, another 5 by 2040, part of a plan to double the capacity of Canada's electric grid by 2050.
If our goal is to double our grid and reach net zero by 2050, there is no credible plan for Canada to do that without nuclear energy.
Compared to fossil fuels, nuclear power plants produce little to no carbon pollution, but environmentalists aren't convinced.
This is very kind of old school thinking.
Greenpeace says while Canada plans to support nuclear, other countries are looking at renewables.
Right now, wind and solar power backed up by batteries can do the same job as nuclear power.
And no, they can't. Nuclear is actually the future, but it's small and mid-sized nuclear that is the future. We see the United States being some of the cutting edge on this, as well as Russia and China moving in that same direction with small and mid-sized. These big nuclear reactors take too long to build, and a lot of it may be old technology by the time they are built. We're seeing major breakthroughs come through in fusion. Small and mid-sized reactors can be built very, very quick. It's a shame they're investing in these mega projects.
But also, why on earth would you bring someone from Greenpeace in and pretend like he knows what he's talking about?
But even large-scale nuclear is better than this wind and solar nonsense that Canada has been investing in for the past decade. If it's so good, why isn't it up in line, and why isn't it working at this point? Because it's a cold weather country with a lot of clouds.
Much lower cost and at much less risk.
The new reactors won't come cheap and are expected to cost more than $100 billion.
One of the things we're focusing on is working with the provinces and working with proponents to make sure we spread that cost effectively over the life of the project.
But cost isn't the only issue.
We still have no technology to dispose of nuclear waste.
Advocates for nuclear energy say there is an established plan for that.
So we're dealing with a very safe technology, and one which has a waste stream, as do all technologies, including wind, solar, and batteries, but one that's been, really remarkably well managed.
Another big question is where these new reactors will be built. So far, only Ontario has plans for new nuclear power, but the federal strategy calls for at least one nuclear reactor to be built outside of Ontario by 2035. David Thurton.
And I will also say it's an oxymoron to say, oh, we want net zero emissions, but also increase our energy production to X and Y, Z amount by 2050.
Yeah, but it's a little bit ridiculous here because the United States has deregulated for nuclear massively recently. They're going full scale ahead because of AI. And Canada, with the amount of regulations they have, it's just they're going to march at a snail's pace towards these nuclear reactors if they ever actually get built. I would say out of the 10, I would expect maybe 4 to get built, and it's those initial 4.
Mm-hmm. But now I'll go back into your comments before we head into Alberta and the world. Sean says Alberta may be even better than Prince Edward Island. Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know what you would say to... Oh, I went to this one. What you would say to Albertans? Please answer. Rage Against Machine says we have to make this independence happen. We could avoid all this pain. Exactly. And again, I don't know why we're not blasting that from the rooftops, but we will start trying to do so on social media as well. Sean says it's hard to keep down inflation when the Canadian dollar keeps going down against the American dollar. Exactly. And if Alberta should be rich with Alberta should be rich with the oil prices up. Exactly. And yet here we are. Hold on, where were we? Philip Espa says, I think the rest of the world realizing how bad Canada is. The rest of the world is realizing how bad Canada is. Look at all the World Cup tourist videos. They are disgusted by the state of Toronto and Vancouver.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah.
Well, and the prices. I mean, $18 a beer is absolutely ridiculous. There is a ton of videos on that. You come to Mexico, you're not paying those prices. And they're even shocked, not even at the stadium prices of beers, but when they go out for a lunch, breakfast, or dinner before the games, they're absolutely shocked. It's completely the opposite in the United States. The portion sizes they're getting for the value is completely different. The same in Mexico.
Cliff Beckett Hillo says it should go to ATB and credit unions and Alberta co-ops. The money, yes.
Well, yeah, and I would also like to see Alberta started investing in nuclear as well, small and mid-sized nuclear plants, and investing in the technology to actually build and export nuclear to other countries. And this is how the energy system should work. We should have used fossil fuels to leapfrog green energy into nuclear. And then fossil fuels aren't obsolete because there's a lot of things that still have to run off fossil fuels, like big equipment and things like that. Nuclear is good for the power grid if you're hooked up to the actual grid.
And over on RUMBLE, Rusty, hello Rusty, says, in the new, I'm going to have to read that one later. Okay, we'll wait till RUMBLE to read those. But Christu says, hello dears Alberta Independence, let's effing go. And yes, let's. And says, good day everyone listening in at work. Thank you so much, Christu. And Rusty, I will read your messages once we go to RUMBLE and I can read them in their entirety. But now let's go to, as I mentioned, Alberta and the world. Starting to get used to the set now. I know where things go. Let's start with
Wait till we move back to the other one.
Let's go to the Globe and Mail that says, quote, opinion, time to put our elbows up and call Donald Trump's bluff like Iran did. How did that work out for them?
This is absolutely ridiculous article. A lot of liberals are actually on board with this. They don't understand what's going on in Iran. Iran has been a pawn piece for the globalists for a long time to cause chaos and other things and to distribute oil to China and other places. It may look like it's not working in Trump's advantage now, but we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes and if this chaos is actually planned and coordinated. There's a lot of talk, and I talk about it quite often, about the ARC alliance. That is Russia, China, America, China, and Russia. And although they're economically at odds with each other, they all realize they have the same enemy in the globalists. So it's very interesting. China and Russia have been putting a lot of pressure on Iran recently as well. So I wouldn't be so quick to think Trump just lost to Iran. I think it's the globalists that are ultimately losing. Europe is the big loser in that war. A lot more people are buying American oil because of what happened in the Strait of Hormuz.
Now let's go
It could have been Alberta. For that matter, they should have been prepared up and running to be selling Alberta oil. It's just a damn shame. The federal government did not build the pipelines to the coast in a manner that they should have built.
Next, Basil the Great says, quote, Charlie Downs has said, Restore Britain is about putting the Indigenous peoples of these isles first. This should not be controversial. It should be, in fact, standard. Yet there is not a single mainstream party other than Restore Britain that is willing to do it.
Yeah, and this rhetoric should be in Alberta as well. We should be putting Albertan citizens first, and that should be the rhetoric coming out of there.
I mean, our de facto slogan right now, and we ran a nationwide billboard campaign on this, as you know, one of them was in Swindon, is a party that will put the British people first. And that is our central principle. Anything that benefits the British people, defined as the Indigenous people of these isles, is what we will do. I mean, our de facto slogan right now, and we ran a nationwide billboard campaign.
It might be a good idea, rather than say Alberta first, because that would be similar to the Americans, Albertans first. The people need to be put first, because Carney is not putting the Canadian people first, that's for sure. And most provinces aren't even putting their own people first because they're not willing to stand up against the federal government. Alberta, at this point, the citizens are trying to put themselves first. So Albertans first might be a good slogan for Alberta independence.
Exactly. Sorry, and I missed one, so I'm just grabbing it now. Here we go. I knew something would go wrong. Antonio Tweet says, quote, on a special episode of Finding Solutions, former mayors and MLAs weigh in on politics today. Here's Renee Merrifield on Canada's future if we actually get out of our own way.
Canada has been on a managed decline for the last decade. And we largely, pulled our poker chips, called the natural resource sector, and we've gone home. And I would say that Trump becomes a very easy, and don't get me wrong, I am not a Trump fan, but Trump becomes a very easy target and a very easy excuse. And really what we need to focus on is our own behavior. And we are the solution. We are the opportunity. We are and should be the wealthiest country in a time of crisis when we have one of the largest or fourth largest resource that's available for the world.
And pause it just for a second. And this is very concerning because everybody knows this, including the liberals and including Carney. As soon as he's done destroying the country, moving the new system towards communism, he's going to cash in on that. That UBI is going to be paid through national resources, and Canada is going to make a hard turn towards communism. This is one of the big reasons I think he's trying to sabotage the USMCA. He knows he has that bailout plan after he can enact the policies he needs, and he has a majority government. So it's not like we're dealing with Trudeau here. We're dealing with one of the people that were pulling the puppet strings on Trudeau, and I think he knows what he's doing overall, and I think he wants communism, and people need to stand up. That's why Alberta is trying to stand up for their independence now.
And again, one of those steps towards moving from socialism towards communism will be to federalize or nationalize a lot of the natural resources. So if we start, and when we start, I would say, seeing that coming through, well, then we know where it's headed.
To have in a way that is far more humane and far better for emissions to extract. So why we would not actually, put those poker chips back on the table and become the resource giant that we should be, and the energy superpower that we have every birthright to become, is beyond me. I often say on the show with Jim that energy is everything, and energy is prosperity. And cheap energy is the greatest prosperity that we could afford to our citizens. And having said that, I think that if we've spent too much time blaming Trump, that we actually don't deal with those issues at home. We haven't gotten a pipeline started. We don't have an economy. We've been in decline for the 3 out of the last 4 quarters.
Okay,
that is scary.
There, and cheap energy for the citizens. That's not what Carney wants. He wants cheap energy for the government, so he can export that and consolidate the power within the government's hands, not the citizens. He wants to keep the citizens weak, poor, and under his thumb.
Exactly. Sorry. Hold on.
We can go into comments, and then we'll go to RUMBLE.
I think we don't have any more.
Oh, okay. Why don't
we blasted through those. But thank you so much, and thank you so much for all the super chats as well. Smile to Life Every Day, Rage Against the Machine. Who else? What's Justin GP and Steven Jensen? Thank you so much as well for all your support. We're heading over to RUMBLE, but before we do so, please don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. Again, it really does help us out. And there will be a 30-second wait screen, and then we'll pop up on RUMBLE, same username, channel name, whatever it's called. We'll see you over there.
Let's get ready to